Hi, Daniel. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you here with us this evening. And where are you now?
I'm just outside London.
Okay. That's very far from Biella, I suppose.
Yeah.
But we are very happy to be here. And so to break the ice and before the talk, we have a fun little quiz for you. And we made the quiz. We made the quiz during our evenings dedicated to PyGameZero. We had four meetup dedicated on PyGameZero and how to build games and learning with Python with PyGameZero. And yes. Later you can explain everything in detail about PyGameZero. So yeah. Okay, so I share my screen. If I can, maybe I have to do some, okay. Make host. Okay. So I will share my screen. Share screen. Okay. Okay.
Okay, that's it.
Okay. Okay, the first question is, where is Biella?
North Italy.
Yes. And the second one is, which is the meaning of Pope, Daniel Pope in Italian?
Papa, with the top left one, without the accent.
Yes, of course. Okay. Which pizza you will not find in Italy?
Oh, with pineapple.
Okay. And of course, what will you see if you type import these on the command line?
You will see the Zen of Python.
Yeah, this is very easy. Okay.
All right.
So, four, congratulations.
Great.
This is a very small quiz here for with PyGameZero that Mario made for us during our lessons.
That's very
okay. Nice. Thank you. Okay, so yes. Okay, now the questions. Okay, what do you do? The first question is, what do you do, and how did you get into Python? Since you have been working with Python for so long?
I work for a hedge fund. I am the Python sponsor for a hedge fund, New York-based hedge fund. And the Python sponsor is the person who advocates for the way that we should be developing Python. So I know tools, style rules, kind of anticipating trends, and ensuring that the firm is using Python effectively. I work with a few other, so I'm the lead Python sponsor, and I have a few other people who have different, who use Python in different kind of domains. So my background is not data science, and so I work with some people who are more experienced in that area. So that's the more interesting part of my role, and then I guess the more normal part of my role is I work on a team that we call SDLC, so Software Development Lifecycle, and that is just building development tooling to use Python in our, or to use all languages actually, but obviously my specialty is Python within our firm. So the other part of the question is I've been using Python since 2003. That's my first my first brush with Python, and I'd already learnt to program. So I was programming in Java and PHP at the time. And I needed to, so I was doing web development, and I needed to shuffle some files around on the server or something, do some simple sysadmin tasks. And that was my first Python script. I learned it in the same afternoon that I was writing the script to shuffle these files around, and I was actually pretty impressed by how easy it was to write that script compared to Java and PHP, which and I was having terrible experiences with PHP at the time. Java, I mean, so, but it's not easy to do little tasks like that. And so from there, I picked up Python to actually use for developing web applications. And I got into Django around the kind of 0.9 time for Django. And that kind of strengthened my understanding of Python. At the time, you always had to dig into the Django code to understand how something was implemented. So the documentation for like forms was missing a ton. And so I kind of, that refined some of my ideas about how to use Python. And then, yeah, I've had a range of roles since, kind of moving away from web development into finance, and you know, like ultimately into SDLC, into tools development, and kind of falling back on my software engineering skills rather than web development skills, which are now extremely rusty. So I'm not too familiar with modern JavaScript. I could probably get by, but I was once fluent in JavaScript, and that's now, I'm not really fluent. And then throughout all of that time, from really picking up Python to today, my main hobby has been programming games. So I taught myself to program games when I was at university, and I was in university from 1999 to 2002. When I picked up Python, I obviously wanted to write games with Python, and I was just having, at the time, the thought was that if you wanted to write games, you had to be programming in C++.
Yes.
And I was struggling with that. Like, I mean, I could write some C++, but you're kind of writing everything from scratch. And by switching to Python, I just suddenly had loads of cool libraries. I was going much faster. And so that's kind of addictive when you can actually create something and make a finished game. Like making a finished game is its own challenge. I mean, it's much easier to, it's easy to come up with big ideas, and they die on the, you know, on the road to implementing them. But still, you know, you learn more by having a language that lets you achieve more and do more projects. So so that's kind of my story. Okay,
it's very, 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 very interesting. And what does Python represent you today in the world? So you see a lot of different areas, a lot of different stuff with Python, with your work. So, and how it's important for you, Python now? Okay, it's your main job, and what do you use it for daily?
I think Python has become the getting things done language in our firm, which wasn't true when I joined. So I've been with my firm for 5 years, and we were traditionally a Java shop. We kind of picked up Python. A lot of the thrust of investing in Python was because we wanted to do data science, and so that was something that started to evolve from about 2010 onwards. But We've gone way past that. So it turns out people were always writing Python at my firm. It just was not on the radar. People were writing scripts to monitor servers and deploy things. And we now have, because we have a monorepo, I'm aware of like how much Python we have, and that's constantly growing. And people are connecting all of the pieces now with Python. When they want to be productive, most productive, they're writing things in Python. And then they are choosing other languages when they have more specific needs. So, and that's kind of the way I think about things as well. I have learned Rust over the past, well, since Rust was first released. So I went to the Rust 1.0 release party in London. And I've written very little Rust really, but I have written a few tools in Rust. And it's not my getting things done language. It's, I have specific needs for performance really. And that is why I would pick that. But for everything else, I just write Python. And there are few problem domains. You start writing Python and then you find the pieces that are best written in something else, but actually 95% of the time Python will, it's adequate.
Yes, you can use Python for everything now.
Yeah.
The main use is of course now in our days for data science, of course, for all AI related stuff and data analysis and something like that. But for example, with Ansible, you use Python, so you can use effectively with every situation in the IT world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and what about the field of education? So have you had an experience in the field of education and also with your work? And what are for you the best experience you have had in this area in the past?
I guess I haven't had a lot of experience with education. And we're going to come on to PyGameZero.
Okay.
So, don't want to kind of jump the gun and talk too much about that, but I try to teach at my firm, but I think that's kind of a different kind of thing to what we're talking about. I actually write a monthly newsletter to my firm, trying to broaden people's understanding of Python and the complicated bits of in fact, the kind of reasons that I love Python. So I include these articles. Obviously, we have things to announce actually in the newsletter. That's the reason for the newsletter, is to tell people, okay, so we're now using Python 3.9. But I try to share some of my love for Python at the end of the newsletter, and explain something complicated, show people how little code it requires to create something that they will have seen before. Like I wrote a Mandelbrot in 10 lines of Python, and a game of life and fractal trees and things. That's how I teach. So hands-on, I've not done a lot of hands-on teaching. Obviously mentoring people in my team, and it's a long time since I've received formal education in Python myself. So although I have done some training courses recently, which we had a training course designed for us that was actually on the subject of trio, and that's beyond what a normal kind of training course would teach us. We're expected to turn up pretty familiar with all of the aspects of Python, and then we're taught about how to the internals of a project and how to contribute to that project, which was quite a new experience for me, and actually really good.
Okay, so I had hands-on hands-on approach for you is the better way, of course, to do this, to do all this stuff and to learn Python?
Oh, well, definitely, you know, you need to get your hands on the keyboard.
Okay.
And actually, I think the thing that I think my philosophy about how to learn to, you know, be an excellent programmer is actually to do lots of projects. Lots of really different projects, and little projects. And you know, the more that you have actually tried, you know, the broader your understanding will be. So, you know, you can keep slogging at one project, and I don't think you learn quite as much as if you have tried 10 little projects.
Okay. So about games and the hands-on part of Python, tell us about PyGameZero. So you made PyGameZero some years ago, and how did the idea came about, and how did it evolve?
So it all started at the at PyCon UK. PyCon UK has an education track, and I started going to PyCon UK at around the time. I think I was there for the first year that they ran a separate education track. And the education track had invited teachers to come in and talk to developers.
Okay.
This was something that was quite, you know, completely unfamiliar to both of us, actually, to both groups of teachers and developers, that the teachers had never really had contact with actual programmers.
Yes.
And the programmers had never really thought about the problems that teachers were having in the classroom, trying to teach basic programming skills. So at that, in the first education track, we were asked to sit down with some teachers. We're broken into groups. We're asked to sit down with 1 or 2 teachers per group, and to try to come up with something that the teachers could use as educational material for Python. So I programmed games. I picked up Pygame because there are a few. Oh, actually, so at the time, you pretty much had to choose between Pygame and Piglet as your game frameworks for Python, and Piglet is a little more advanced. So Pygame was the thing to choose, and I hammered out the simplest possible Pygame program, and showed it to my teacher friend, the teacher who was based in my group. He said, "No, that is too complicated. I cannot teach that."
Okay.
So just the fact that you had to write about 15 lines of code to have the ability to open a window and to be able to close it again was too much for a classroom setting, because it actually explained that the slowest children would still be struggling with typos in the import statements, when the fastest children had written it all and were bored already. So he needed a way to be able to do that in chunks, in much smaller pieces for his classroom. We didn't achieve anything from that session, apart from it planted the seed of, okay, how do we do that? How could we actually go away and make the task of programming a game even simpler than the simplest Pygame program? So I sat on that idea for a year, maybe. I had thoughts about it, and the thoughts were very much in the shape of PyGameZero as you see it today. So I then entered PyWeek. So PyWeek is a games programming contest that is run online at pyweek.org.
Okay.
And I had a game in mind. I wrote an adventure game,
Okay.
Legend of Goblet, and it won. So
we can play that game. We can play that game.
Yeah,
it's open.
Yeah,
okay.
It's so you can find all of my games on pyweek.org.
Okay. Okay.
And that one, it was written in. I think we're probably talking 2014, 2015. So it was written in in Python 2, sorry. So you would need a Python 2 interpreter.
Okay.
But it won, so I can recommend it to you as a fun experience. But as I was writing it, I was thinking I had this PyGameZero idea in my mind, and I started to write a bit of a framework. So I don't always do that in PyWeek. You have 1 week to write a game, so I don't always try to invest in the technology. I just try to have a finished product. But I had kind of partitioned the project into a framework that was kind of the shape of what I wanted, and the game engine on top of that. And then at PyCon that year, or the next PyCon, so that was in the US that time, so that was PyCon Montreal. I sat down with the founder of PyWeek, Richard Jones, and I said, I've got this idea, I've got some code for it. I want to make a game framework that is completely zero boilerplate. And we hacked for the sprints at PyCon US that time. PyCon, well, it's in Montreal, so PyCon US Canada. And we came up with PyGameZero, and in kind of the form that it is today. And I took it from there, really. So
and now how is it evolving at PyGameZero?
So it has not evolved in a few years.
Okay.
I've sprinted on it at several sprints. It is difficult to. The challenge is that you have very young children taking their first steps in programming, and actually that really complicates things. That they're not going to be able to deal with things like version problems or backwards compatibility. So stability is actually really good. So the main thing is that as we develop PyGameZero, we have to develop it right. We have to, really. I don't really have a word for it. Like finesse the features, and make sure they're exactly implemented in the right way. We've made some changes over time, but actually we kept all backwards compatibility. But it's better to do nothing but leave the product working than it is to actually present a problem for teachers. So I have ideas. There are actually quite a few pull requests that have different approaches to implement certain things, and it's about choosing between those approaches and landing those changes and really putting a gloss on the whole thing. Okay.
And what feedback do you have about the use of PyGameZero from teachers to, professionists?
Yeah. I've had. I was actually pretty amazed with how much teachers liked PyGameZero, and how important they thought it was. So I had somebody from the Raspberry Pi Foundation say, he said to me, like, I don't think you realize how amazing this is, because you have reduced the age at which we can teach children to write in a textual programming language by maybe 2 years, which is fantastic. So that's
right. It's really amazing.
Job done.
There is also Scratch, a
Right.
competitor. Yes, for
No, not really.
Okay.
So Scratch is you're obviously not writing in text. You are snapping together blocks, and
Yes.
that's a good approach. That's a good approach for younger children. And then it's actually PyGameZero is really good at filling the niche when you want to transition to writing text, to typing code, because if you think about Scratch gives you so much. It gives you the ability to, you can put something on the screen really easily, you snap together some blocks and it works. And then the way we tend to teach Python is, okay, so now that was all the stuff that you could achieve. And now here you have a REPL and you have input and print, and you're going to ask the user their name and print hello name. And PyGameZero fills a niche where, okay, we're transitioning to textual programming languages, and here is a toolkit to let you do what you could just do in Scratch.
Okay. And okay, so the next project that you are working now, it's Wasabi 2D.
Yeah.
And what is Wasabi 2D, and how did you come up with the idea to create it, an engine for 2D games? And
so this goes back to PyWeek. So I've been doing PyWeek for a long time, and I actually now run PyWeek. So
okay. So now you're the organizer.
Yeah. So actually, I mean, if you've enjoyed using PyGameZero in the sessions, come and join us at PyWeek, and we'll have a competition in September. But as I wrote PyGameZero. I wrote a game in the game that I won with that turned into PyGameZero was written in Pygame, and I don't always do that. It's actually quite rare for me to use Pygame in my PyWeek entries. So I wanted to do faster graphics. So I was using a lot of Piglet. I don't know if I've used anything other than that. But then I started to want to do more. I wanted to do shaders. I wanted it to go faster.
Okay.
And
particles and some effects.
Yes. Well, I already had a solution for particles, actually. So I inherited a library called Lepton, which actually dates from the really early PyWeek days. But I wanted to put it all together. I wanted to save myself the effort. And actually, I found that every PyWeek, I was starting from scratch without really the tools that I had in PyGameZero, because it's focused on Pygame and educational, the educational domain, but there's a lot of cool stuff in there. And I also wanted I had done some things with NumPy and ModernGL, and NumPy is fantastic. I got into NumPy far too late, but that's really cool. And ModernGL is a library for OpenGL graphics that actually takes away a lot of the complexity of that. It wraps an object-oriented API around it. It's pretty well designed. It's fast. So I wanted to put all those things together. I wanted the capabilities of ModernGL. I wanted the helpful abstractions of PyGameZero. So I combine these things. I reversed only a few of the decisions in PyGameZero. It's like, what if there was PyGameZero, which I've sometimes described as training wheels for Pygame. What if we took the training wheels off? What would it look like to have an actual kind of pro games framework with based on the same ideas? Taking out the magic, which is helpful only for really your earlier steps, and create a more advanced framework, and hopefully faster. I was hoping that it would be faster than Piglet, but I almost always write 2D games, so that's why it's limited to 2D. Excuse me. There's a great reason for writing 2D games over 3D games, and that is, in a Pi week you'll not get very far with a 3D game. Like some people have won it with a 3D game, but you have a whole extra dimension to fill with content, with graphics, and your maths gets harder, and the visual, the amount of detail that you need textures and you need models. All of these things are slower than just 2D sprites and animations. So it's slower to, more effort to create. So that's why I've tended to write 2D games, and so Wasabi 2D is focused on 2D as the primary use case, and then maybe we'll do something with 3D later. And all of that said, there's an extra kind of thought there, which is that Wasabi 2D, because it doesn't have that. I talked about the need for stability for PyGameZero for kids, and Wasabi 2D doesn't have that. So this is a test bed, right? So we can use Wasabi 2D to try things out and find what features need to go into, or what features can be, how to write something, for example, that could be put into PyGameZero. And that's actually quite liberating. So I've also done, with Wasabi 2D, I've actually fixed some Pygame bugs in underlying Pygame. I did some work last summer to make joystick hot plugging work, and joysticks in general on Pygame 2. I wrote something this year called PyFXR, which is a sound generator for Pygame. And Piglet has a kind of sound generator API. It's not well documented, and it's written in pure Python. So this is written in Python, and it can generate explosions and laser sounds, and it's really fast. It can generate piano sounds and things like that as well. So these are things that would be really fun for kids to play with. So it's now on the roadmap to get that back into PyGameZero as well. Okay, this is very, very, very interesting. And one of the criticism that is often made with Python used for games is that there is no great Python engine like, for example, Unity. So Python, when you move from scratch, from a demo, from something small to a larger games or something like that, Python is not a common choice. It's not a useful choice. Why for you there is this mentality, and is it true? And why Python is lower than, for example, Unity with C# or something like that? Yeah, so I mean, it's a great point. Like Python is slow. It is it's not only slow, it's single-threaded, and that is problematic if you want to push your computer to its limits to do the most amazing graphics that you can do. Then that is going to be a problem for Python. That doesn't mean that you couldn't actually, Python can't play a role in a game like that. So you could, if you have the time to invest, you can build a game engine. You could release with less effort than a game engine than actually. If I'm writing Wasabi 2D as an open source project for other people to use, And that's probably a bigger challenge than if you just wanted to create a game that does exactly what the idea that you had in mind, and release it. You could create a commercial game using Python. You don't need amazing graphics for every type of game.
Yes, of course.
But yeah, you would be swimming against the stream. So reasons to use Python are because you like Python.
Okay. Okay.
And you there are other things you can do with Python. So it's you can use the right tool for the job, really, but Python is an all-round language, and it's kind of sad to see people say you just can't do something in Python, because you can do it.
Okay.
And hopefully Wasabi 2D will be an option for some of those things one day.
Of course. and about Python, what future do you imagine or see for the Python language? There was a lot of announcement this year about Guido van Rossum and all the stuff related to the Python Foundation. So what do you imagine and see?
For Python, so I don't think Python is going anywhere in the data space. In the scientific computing, it is really heavily entrenched, and it's been amazing to see that happen actually over the years that I've been in the Python community, and people coming back and saying, oh yeah, we detected gravitational waves, and our gravity telescope is all of the software is to control it is implemented in Python, and all of the software we use to analyze the data is implemented in Python, and that's completely amazing. So I think compared to other languages in the data space, the advantage is that you have a full language that you can get other stuff done with. You can connect the dots with Python as well as actually doing the analysis. But at the same time, I do think that, there are some excellent languages out there, new languages. So I'm actually a huge fan of Rust. And I think one thing that you really get by programming in Rust is that the type system is great compared to Python's type system. So I think Python's type system is too little, too late. Although types are really good for documentation, and it's always been good practice to document types, but type checking and how complete the type system is, I think type checking doesn't always break even in terms of the amount of time you invest in it versus the amount of time it saves you. So I think, yeah, that kind of does give me hesitation as to whether other languages will steal into Python's market share. But for the time being, at least, Python's on top of the world, right? So you hear about something cool that's a new piece of technology on Hacker News or Reddit or something, and you go away and look at the GitHub, and it's written in Python. Of course, it is. So
okay. So from the outside, we see that the English community, especially with games, is very, very active, and there are a lot of events also during the pandemic. And what are the reasons for you, according to you, yes, for this interest and this success? And do you have any suggestion for us?
I don't know if I know what you're talking about. If you what kind of events have there been during the pandemic?
During the pandemic, I saw the PyCon here in Italy. The PyCon and the PyCon US. I saw the PyCon US, yes, but now no events from no events during the academic from England, but I saw a lot of blog and publication and GitHub repo and a lot of stuff like related to the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the Python community in England is pretty strong just as a result of having had a PyCon early, and our PyCon was so it's not run for, it didn't run last year and it hasn't run this year, but PyCon UK has always had like a kind of, it was founded by a guy called John Pinner, and I don't think he took life too seriously. So it always had a kind of humorous vibe, and we always had some funny talks, and that kind of thing is great for creating a community. And I think sense of humor is really important. And that's you know, one of my games, the game that I won with that turned into PyGameZero, is an adventure game, and it has a lot of jokes in it, including Monty Python jokes. So yeah, humor and having fun is important for these things.
So we start with a quiz, with a Pygame quiz,
Yeah.
so we are in the right mood.
Well, I mentioned the London Python Dojo, but the London Python Dojo it's a meetup, and we after some pizza and beer and socializing, we write some Python. So we there's a phase of writing ideas on a whiteboard, and anybody can come to the whiteboard and write down an idea, and then we do a round of voting, and we then try to implement the idea. And the goal has become, from both the writing of the ideas and the implementing of the ideas, to make everybody else fall about with laughter. So have some really silly ideas written up sometimes, like I don't know, we kind of riff off each other's ideas. So it probably won't work if I just remember ideas off the top of my head. But then we have, because we create the project in maybe an hour's programming, an hour and a half tops, and then we have a show and tell, and we need to so you need to writing any project in that amount of time is a challenge, but usually everybody tries to find one way to amuse other people, like whether the implementation is when you look behind the scenes and you show the project working, you look behind the scenes and it's written in a completely weird way, or actually the whole result was faked and it just prints the output that they wanted it to have. So find ways to amuse from that. And then, you know, that keeps people coming back and keep learning.
Yeah, of course. So the last question, the last one, the most important one. When are you coming to visit us in Italy? But especially Biella, of course.
Appena che è possibile.
Okay.
Mi piace l'Italia.
We are waiting for you here, also in Biella. We have a lot of beautiful mountains, a lot of beautiful places. So if you want to come, just tell us. Okay, so we have
I dream of going back to Italy. It's been a couple of years. I was married in Italy, so
okay.
And that's why I learned a little Italian.
Okay. So we have a question from Cesar for you.
Yeah. So it's a very, let's say, general question. You mentioned that you use kind of like Wasabi as a bench for features that you can move into PyGameZero. So my question was like, are the two architectures similar?
Very.
Okay.
Yeah. So the graphics is completely different.
Okay.
But that's the only part that's different. So sound is the same. The way that sprites and fonts and sounds and music are loaded is the same. And actually, and this is just the easiest way to write a game framework. If you already have a game framework and you want to do something different, take the last one, strip out the bits you don't like. But the graphics is very different, and that's because I wanted to do OpenGL, and I think one of the lessons that actually I should have I think it's too late to change for PyGameZero, but Wasabi 2D is scene graph based. So which everybody now knows from the DOM in a browser. You have a model of what you are displaying, and you alter that model. Whereas PyGameZero, you construct your own model, but you have to write a function which will draw all the graphics. So in Wasabi 2D, you don't write a draw function, you construct the model.
Okay, and so in order for, so you mentioned that just the graphics are different, and so how do you handle the movement of these parts from one to the other? Do you have wrappers, or you just rewrite the code? So like, do you try to share the same code, or you kind of readapt it a bit more?
So far it's been easy enough to manually merge changes between the two projects.
Okay.
PyFXR is perhaps the first example of PyFXR and this joystick stuff for Pygame are attempts at other ways. So because they both share Pygame as a dependency, I can fix things in Pygame and then it is available in both. I'm not using Pygame graphics, so it's only in Wasabi 2D. So that's only for the other stuff like creating a window and sound and those things. And PyFXR is another example. So I've created a library that is really intended to go into both. So both of them will pick up a dependency on PyFXR in order to do the new features.
Okay, thank you.
So we have another question from Carolina.
Yes, maybe it's a stupid question, but I'm not a computer scientist. So we mentioned that there are currently no game engine written in Python. But I know it's possible to have the engine in one language and then all the surface layers in other languages. Wouldn't Python work this way as a surface layer?
Yes. So there are languages. There are game frameworks that are in that space. So Panda 3D is a game engine, and it's pretty advanced, pretty good. The trick there was that it is written kind of really targeting Python as the language that you use to program it. I think originally it was C++ or Python, and I think I'm right in saying that they have kind of hidden the C++ and focused on the Python. But for game engines like Unity and Godot is another one, and Unreal Engine. So I don't have a project to use Python in Unity, but there have been projects to use Python for both Godot and Unreal Engine, which are both implemented in C++. And the problem there is that it is pretty hard to write C++ bindings for Python. So to write an interface that lets you, write normal Python idiomatic Python and have it work efficiently in the game engine. So, both of those projects have been open source projects by individual people who were interested in doing it, and so they are, they're not production quality, let's say. They have taken experimental ways to try to kind of wrap the object model that is in the C++ API of those game engines and expose it into Python. And they may be incomplete and they may crash. So I'm not saying that they will. I don't want to denigrate the quality of those things. So you could give them a try. But Python is not a first-class language for those game engines.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have the last one from Caesar again.
Okay. So hi, once again. So we were talking a bit kind of mentioning about the issues of Python. One being that it's not efficient in speed mostly, but well, it's true, but at the same time, I find out that with all the libraries that basically rely on C, this is kind of depending on what you do, more of a problem. So my question for you is, what do you think it's the worst trait in Python? Since you love Python very much, I do the same. So what is for you the worst trait of Python?
The worst trait of Python.
It's a very tough question.
Yeah. I guess it has to be the performance, and we always have to fight performance battles in Python. When it actually matters, and most of the time it doesn't matter, but it's the thing that you ultimately hit. With somewhere in your project there is a bit that is just too slow. I think one of the good trait of Python is that it's so easy to inject code in another language that can make it faster. I say easy, it's not at all easy compared to writing Python, but there are good libraries too. Python is great, and I've used the PyGameZero bindings for Rust, and other people at my firm swear by PyBind 11, but it's there's a huge step up to attempt that, and it would just be nice if we didn't have to.
Yeah, I agree. There is always this library that does the same thing that another one does faster, but has other problems. So it's kind of this looking for the speed, but then you lose something. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, so grazie mille, Daniel, for this evening and for chatting with us. It was a true honor for us to have you tonight here on Python Villa Group.
Yeah, thank you. It was nice.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so we're done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. About before, yes, an applause. About before, we saw PyGameZero, the first time that we saw PyGameZero is from Wireframe magazine, from the Raspberry Pi community. It's a very good magazine, and Mario took some example and some games from the Wireframe magazine.
Well, I've written some code for Wireframe magazine, so if you saw the earlier issues, then you might have seen my code in it.
Okay.
And also they send me, they gave me some subscriptions for having both, contributed to the magazine and also, I guess, for in appreciation of PyGameZero. So I now get 4 copies of every issue, and I have mountains of them.
Okay, it's very good publication. I think it's very, 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 very interesting.
Yeah.
They had a very good job to take the famous games, for example, and re-implement it with PyGameZero. It's very, very, very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so thank you for your time, and thank you for all. And we've got, I switched to Italian for all. If you want to go, you are free now, so you can go to your daughter. And thank you.
My daughter's asleep, but I
okay.
I ought to go and keep my wife company.
Okay. So I will switch to Italian. I'm sorry. I'm trying to speak slow.
Okay.
For you. Ok, grazie a tutti per tutto per queste serate. Siamo a 60, quindi grazie davvero. È stata una bella sfida. E abbiamo preparato per voi un piccolo questionario per capire, insomma, che cosa fare a settembre. So I will say in English also for you, Daniel. And so if you want to, se volete scrivere appunto e compilare il questionario, per noi è importante perché ci permette di capire appunto su che cosa puntare a settembre con la nuova stagione. Ve lo metto qui nella chat. Ok. Oh no, scusate. Sì, no, è giusto. Ok. Okay, so this is a very short form to understand what topics we want to discuss and use for the next season on September, and if someone has some comments about. Okay, so we will send you, vi mandiamo poi i risultati sul gruppo Telegram, and also you, Daniel, if you want to join our Telegram group, we'll send you a link if you want to follow us. Okay, so for tonight, I think that we are. So, ok. Va bene, ok, grazie a tutti, grazie mille, e buone vacanze, ci vediamo presto, a settembre probabilmente, poi vi scriviamo quando. Grazie davvero a tutti per essere qua, e per noi un grande onore e una grande gioia comunque vedervi tutti qui questa sera dopo 60 incontri, 60 sono tantissimi, quindi grazie davvero.